So good day everyone. So today I will going to explain on you what is speech acts all about. So first I will going to give you a simple definition of a speech act first. So it's include real life interaction and require not only knowledge of the language but also appropriate use of that language within a given culture. Speech acts is an action performed in saying something. We perform speech acts when we offer an apology, greeting, request, complaint, invitation, compliment, or refusal. Attempts to explain how speaker use language to accomplish intended action and how listener determine an intended meaning from what is said, and it is a subfield of pragmatics concerned with the ways in which words can be used to not only to present information but also to carry out action. So let's proceed with the classification of speech acts. First, we have locutionary acts. Locutionary acts is the act of saying or writing something in a language. It is the actual words spoken. For elaboration, this is the act of performing words into the utterances that make sense in a language with correct grammar and pronunciation. Locution, a form of expression, a phrase, an expression. Speech act theory broadly explains these utterances by saying something, the locution with a certain meaning in traditional sense. Then let's proceed with the illocutionary act. Illocutionary act is we have two types of illocutionary acts. We have expressive and representative. Let's identify expressive first. It's an apology, a complaint, thank, or maybe congratulate, while the representative, it is assert, suggest, hypothesize, and swear. Illocutionary acts is this is the real action which are performed by the utterance. We're saying equals doing as in betting, believe, dare, warning, etc. The performance of an act in saying something versus the general act of saying something. The illocutionary force is the speaker intent, a true speech act by informing, ordering, warning, undertaking. So, for example, I promise to pay you back. This is an example of a locutionary act because it intends to communicate. For the last part, we have perlocutionary act. Perlocutionary act, it is the effect produced in the listener or reader when they listen or read a locutionary act. So for example, we have I don't have any money. Maybe accepting the request or maybe denying the request. For instance, perlocutionary act, it is the effect that an utterance has on the thoughts, feelings, or attitudes of the listener. Perlocution, an act of speaking or writing which aims to effect an action but which in itself does not affect or constitute the action, as persuading, convincing. It is speech acts that have an effect on the feelings, thoughts, or actions of either the speaker or the listener. In other words, they seek to change minds, such as persuading, convincing, scaring, enlightening, inspiring, or otherwise getting someone to do or realize something. When examining perlocutionary acts, this is the effect on the hearer or reader is emphasized. Example, please find the black cat. It is an example of directive perlocutionary act because it seeks to change behavior. So let's proceed with the direct and indirect speech. Direct is the locutionary act and the illocutionary act coincide. The intention is expressed in the message, while the indirect, this is no coincidence between the type of illocutionary act and the syntactic structure of the message. The intention is not explicitly expressed in the message. So, direct speech, let's identify direct speech first. This is the semantic meaning of a sentence is the same as what the speaker intended to convey. It is described as a direct speech act. So for example, when a speaker doesn't know something and asks the hearer to provide the information, he or she will typically produce a direct speech act of the following type. So we have interrogative questions, imperative command, or declarative statements. So the example of interrogative questions is, did you eat the pizza? That's already an example of interrogative, while the imperative is please or maybe an example of request, while the declarative statement is you ate the pizza. Then we have indirect speech. Indirect speech act whenever one of the forms of in the set above is used to perform a function other than the one listed beside it. The result is an indirect speech act. Now compare this utterance with can you pass the salt? In the second example, you would not usually understand the utterance as a question about your ability to do something. In fact, you would not treat this as a question at all. You would treat it as a request and perform the action requested. We are not really asking a question about someone's ability. In fact, we don't normally use this structure as a question at all. We normally use it to make a request. That is, we are using a syntactic structure associated with the function of a question. But in this case, with the function of a request, this is an example of an indirect speech act. It is possible to have strange effects if one person fails to recognize another person's indirect speech act. Consider the following. A visitor to a city, carrying his luggage, looking lost, stops a passer-by. Excuse me, do you know where the Ambassador Hotel is? Oh sure, I know where it is, and walks away. The main reasons we use indirect speech acts seem to be that actions such as request, presented in indirect way, could you open that door for me, are generally considered to be more gentle or more polite in our society than direct speech acts. Open that door for me. Exactly. Why they are considered to be more polite is based on some complex social assumptions. So let's proceed with the felicity conditions. So we have 5 felicity conditions. So let's start with the sincerity conditions. So what is sincerity conditions? It is related to the speaker's mind. For example, a valid apology requires that the speakers feel remorse for his act. So basically, sincerity conditions where the speech act is being performed seriously and sincerely. The words sincerely and seriously. That is sincerity conditions all about. Then we have preparatory conditions. Preparatory conditions are those existing antecedent to the utterance, including the speaker's belief about the hearer's capabilities and state of mind. An apology requires that the speaker believes that some act occurred is harmful to the speaker. So, preparatory, where the authority of the speaker and the circumstances of the speech act are appropriate to its being performed successfully. Then we have essential condition, require that the utterance is recognizable as an instance of the elocutionary acts in a question. A valid apology requires that the utterance is recognizable as an apology. So, this is where the speaker intends that an utterance be acted upon by the addressee. Then we have propositional content, which is related to the state of affairs predicated in the utterance, so which requires participants to understand language, not to act like actors. For the last part, we have general conditions, which is the participants should understand the language and they should not play roles. Someone in a movie promises to do something. This is an example of general conditions. So we have 5 categories of speech act. So we have declarations. This is the speech acts that change the state of the world via utterances. For example, I pronounce you husband and wife, or we find the defendant guilty. So for elaboration, declaration, it is the speech act that changed the world via their utterance word. Then we have representatives. The speech acts that states what the speaker believes to be the case or not. Statements of fact, assertions, conclusion, and descriptions. For example, the world is flat, or maybe it is a sunny day. So this is statements of fact. So this is an example of representatives. So representative speech acts that state what the speakers believe to be the case or not. Fact, assertions, conclusion, descriptions, representing the world as he believes it is. Then we have expressives. The speech acts that state what the speaker feels. Psychological states pleasure, pain, likes, joy, or maybe sorrow. For example, I am sorry, or maybe congratulations. So these speech acts that state what the speaker feels. For example, pain. So this is already an example of state what the speaker feels by saying sorry, or maybe by congratulate someone. Then we have directive. Directives, the speech act is used by the speaker to get someone else to do something. For example, commands, orders, requests, suggestions. For example, go away. So speech acts, directive speech acts that the speaker used to get someone else to do something. For example, give me a coffee, or give me a cup of coffee. So that's already an example of directives. Acts belong to requesting someone by getting me a coffee. Then we have assertives, representatives, which commit the speaker to the truth of the expressed proposition, expressing a belief. They include statements, descriptions, assertions, predictions. So for example, the statements of fact, which is the earth is. So that's it. Thank you for listening. God bless.